Don't tell me. The Nobel Committee has awarded you the Peace Prize.
I'm hoping that wasn't meant as an insult, sir.
Have a seat, cadet.
Because I am cadet commander, I deserve the respect accorded that rank, sir.
Oh, shut up, Buckner, and sit down.
Thousands of people in this country die fighting a war against assholes like you.
The movie begins with our protagonist, Karl Thomasson, participating in a mercenary mission near the Bolivia-Argentina border.
It's too early in the morning for this. I haven't even had my coffee yet. Is your guy as young as this one? Younger!
Sometimes later, Karl visits an old superior officer from the Army, General Robert Teague. The general tells him about his nephew, who's currently enrolled in a military academy and was invited to join a small elite unit within the academy called the Werewolf Company. However, Teague suspects that the unit is some kind of white supremacist cult, spearheaded by the academy's new commanding officer.
Everything changed once this new commandant, Brack, signed on. War hero. More decorations than a damn Christmas tree.
Worried for his nephew, who has since cut contact with his family, Teague wants Karl to infiltrate the academy as a substitute history teacher. Teague has other trustworthy officers already there, but he wants Karl to lead them, and gives him the secret phrase to know his allies.
You know Baron von Richthofen.
He began his military career in the cavalry.
That's the code.
Agreeing to the mission, Karl starts his first day as a military history teacher. Unsurprisingly, the school is very strict. In the morning, the students are being berated by other students who are part of the Werewolf Company, dressed in black and red uniforms. Brack is leading the morning assembly by preaching.
Soldiers are respected. You are respected here. You are respected here more than you will be in any other place on God's earth.
Meanwhile, Karl is approached by a lady.
Are you lost, or do you always have that look on your face?
I'm lost, and I always have this look on my face. I'm the new history teacher.
I'm the Academy's medical officer, Dr. Chamberlain. Jennifer. Do you have any experience in the military?
A little. How long have you been?
About 2 years next year.
Well, thanks very much for the help. I'm sure I'll see you around.
I'm sure you will.
Inside his office, Brack is receiving some surveillance documents from the top dog of Werewolf Company, a student named Buckner. Karl enters the office as Buckner leaves and introduces himself to Brack. Brack addresses Karl with a tone of thinly veiled condescension, and during their small talk, Brack seems to try to gauge Karl's social and ideological standing, but Karl keeps his poker face on and doesn't give himself away.
I think you'll find the academy is a positive place to work. The cadets are eager and disciplined, ready to follow orders. Come to think of it, so are the teachers.
Well, then I'm sure I'll fit right in, sir.
I'm sure you will. And if you don't, you won't last long, that's a promise.
On the school's field, Karl stops to watch a hand-to-hand combat class in session. The instructor says that anyone can learn basic hand-to-hand combat.
In hand-to-hand combat, we have hand strikes. Your greatest weapon will be turning your enemy's force against him. Excuse me, sir!
Me?
The instructor asks Karl to volunteer for a demonstration. Karl acts like he's a civilian who can't fight, but when the instructor begins his demonstration...
Don't worry about it, you're not gonna hurt me.
Well, that's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried you're gonna hurt me.
Let's try that again.
It turns out that Karl already recognized the instructor as one of his old subordinates in the military, Sergeant Devlin. After dismissing his class, Devlin utters the secret phrase to Karl, meaning that he's also undercover for Teague. When he shows Karl the way to his new lodgings, Karl is eager to talk about their mission.
This place has eyes and ears, if you know what I mean. Tell you what, there's a little roadhouse about 5 miles south of here. We'll talk there.
Karl walks into his assigned flat and is surprised to see a man standing by the fireplace. He's the campus gardener, Luther, and he's acting nonchalant before leaving without an explanation. Suspicious, Karl inspects the area around the fireplace and finds a bugging device. He needs to be careful on the campus. The next day, Karl puts on his uniform and teaches his first military history class.
To be a good soldier, you must know the enemy. To know the enemy, you must know history. Who said that?
Buckner is in his class, and so is Teague's nephew, Ted.
Are you any relation to General Bud Teague?
Uncle, sir.
Well, your uncle was one hell of a soldier.
Hearing this, Buckner interjects, trying to steer Karl to talk about the Holocaust. Buckner shares his belief that the Holocaust isn't real, but Karl keeps challenging his view.
So you're saying that the Holocaust never happened? So the Nazis never killed anyone?
Not 6 million people, sir.
Until Brack interrupts their discussion.
Good afternoon.
Sir! Yes, sir!
Karl takes a stroll after class to watch the Werewolf Company conducting a private drill practice. Jenny walks over to join him, explaining that the Werewolf Company is the school's elite team, since Karl is pretending to be clueless. She also points out the 2 military advisors, Van and Lim, who are specially hired to oversee the team's training. Afterwards, Karl meets with Devlin in the nearby dive bar to talk about the mission. Devlin explains that the Werewolf Company is secluded from the rest of the students, and they sometimes go on secret training missions. Both Karl and Devlin believe that the students participating in the Werewolf Company are trained to be neo-Nazis by Brack. Devlin also wagers that the so-called private military advisors are actually ex-convicts, hired for an unknown reason. He thinks they need to spy on the Werewolf Company's secret missions and infiltrate their private compound located near the campus. So, at night, the 2 men work on their infiltration through underground tunnels. Upon reaching the compound, they can see that the werewolves are doing an odd ritual by the campfire, thrashing around and chanting about white supremacy. Brack then joins them and gives a speech about using violence, crime, and terror to ensure that white people stay in power and the minorities shall not coexist with them in peace. It's clear to Karl that Brack is indoctrinating these children for his own purposes. The men continue their infiltration once the ritual is finished. The compound is very secure, so Devlin needs some time to ensure that they won't trip any early warning systems before breaking through a small part of the fence. Karl hears a sound behind them, so he goes to investigate while Devlin continues tinkering. Lim ambushes Karl from behind. They end their investigation, and in the morning, Buckner announces to Karl that Ted won't be joining his classes anymore. Buckner also demands respect from his teacher, which Karl dismisses, and instead, he mocks Buckner in front of the class.
Have a seat, cadet.
Because I am cadet commander, I deserve the respect accorded that rank, sir.
Oh, shut up, Buckner, and sit down.
He tells Buckner to fight him and gain his respect.
Thousands of people in this country die fighting a war against assholes like you.
After he snaps out of his anger, he barges into Brack's office to ask why Ted was removed from his class. Instead of answering straightforwardly, Brack says that perhaps Ted is being vigilant and talks about how the werewolves are the only students who understand the price to pay for ensuring freedom.
Now, if there's nothing else, I have work to do.
Captain?
In a lighter mood, Jenny visits Karl's lodgings to give him a bottle of wine as a welcoming present. They talk about Karl's past in the military, and when he mentions he used to be a mercenary, this puts Jenny off.
So I have things to do.
In class, Karl asks his other students why the werewolves were missing attendance. They say that they've gone to one of their secret trainings, so Karl stakes out the werewolves' compound to see them leaving on military vehicles, along with Van and Lim. He couldn't follow them, but after a couple of days, the missing werewolves returned to class.
Let's talk about the Civil War. I think it's important for all of us to understand the role that black soldiers played in the Union victory.
And you know, some say, sir, that we're primed for another civil war, this time whites against blacks.
I don't know if you're aware of this, Buckner, but they actually have medication for people with your condition.
I want to be an airborne ranger, living a life of blood and danger.
Jenny visits Karl during the weekend and apologizes for her attitude the last time they met. They go to the bar for some drinks, where they both sort out their misunderstandings and explain their backgrounds. They return to Karl's flat for some wine, and things get spicy between the two. However, Karl gets a call in the middle of their makeout session, telling him to meet somewhere.
I have to go. Sorry.
Karl drives to the meeting point and calls General Teague, asking where he is. Teague answers in confusion, never having called Karl while he's undercover.
Karl, what are you talking about?
It's a setup orchestrated by Brack, who orders Buckner and Van to take care of Karl. They smash his car with their truck and shoot at his car until it explodes, but Karl manages to escape.
Go, go, go!
They keep shooting at him, and he keeps dodging until he gets into a front loader truck to drive towards the two. While Buckner runs away, Van gets back into the truck, which gets crushed by the front loader until it's smashed and burnt, killing him.
Jenny, I owe you an apology.
For last night.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'd like to make it up to you.
How about next Saturday?
Oh, I'd love to.
Bye.
See you.
On Karl's front porch, he and Devlin uncover digital traces of Brack's white supremacist group. They also find evidence suggesting that the werewolf unit was behind the bombing of a bank that often supports minority-owned businesses. In the background, Luther silently watches them. Then Karl talks to Ted alone, saying that he and his uncle are trying to protect him. However, Ted rejects his offer for help. During a ball attended by the whole school, Karl and Jenny dance together. He sees Brack, Lim, and the werewolves quietly leave the ball, so he leaves Jenny to investigate the team, who are quietly leaving for another secret mission. Karl wants to sneak into one of the trucks, and he orders Devlin to stand by on campus in case he needs to be saved.
If I don't come back, I need somebody to come get me.
They arrive at a power plant that was backed by the bank the werewolves attacked in the past. The team infiltrates through a tunnel, with Karl following behind them. The cadets place bombs on the pipes, hijack the electrical systems, and place more bombs inside the facility, while Karl secretly tracks them.
We've got exactly 12 minutes.
17 stories down.
One of the cadets falls from a ladder and gets impaled on a pipe. Ted, who is now part of the werewolves, wants to save his friend.
What about Frey? Some people lost. Go!
And Karl sneaks back into the truck undetected. He watches as the facility explodes behind him. When Karl returns to campus, he walks in on Jenny being intimate with Brack. With that betrayal, he focuses on inspecting the bombed power plant with Devlin, and Luther walks in on them. He berates them for acting very obviously suspicious and says that some powerful people are backing Brack up for these hate crimes. It turns out that Luther is also one of Teague's men. Luther says they can't connect the two bombings directly to Brack, and trying to penalize the werewolves won't solve the bigger issue. They need to work hard to yank it by the roots. Then, Luther shows them where they buried the previous history teacher. The man was killed by Lim because he got too nosy about Brack's business. Not far from there, Luther shows them his stash of various kinds of explosives and arms. He is certainly well equipped.
Coffee?
Meanwhile, Ted barges into Brack's office, angry about his friend's death.
Casualties, Ted. They are an unfortunate fact of combat.
He rips off his werewolf's insignia and says that he doesn't share Brack's racist values. In response, Brack tells a story about being in the same shoes as Ted when he was younger. He then shows the huge scar his leader gave him when he wanted to quit his old team, subtly threatening Ted that he'll do the same. After that, Lim is showing Brack a plan's blueprint when Jenny barges in, also complaining about the cadet being left to die. Brack makes a racist and sexist remark, upsetting both Jenny and Lim, but they can only walk away. Later, Devlin reports to Karl that the werewolves have left their compound, indicating they're doing another attack. Luther gives them a vehicle equipped with GPS that can track the bug planted on the team's vehicles. Before Karl and Devlin leave, Luther informs them that Brack also went with the team, something he's never done before. They follow the werewolves until they all stop in the woods. Karl volunteers to look around while Devlin stays in the car to keep track of Lim, who's still on the move alone. The werewolves are huddled by a fireplace, which turns out to be used for branding their insignia on Ted's body. Devlin tells Karl that Lim is heading towards Teague's house, so Karl calls the older man. He doesn't respond because he's listening to music on his boat, so they head to the house, which is 45 minutes away. As they leave, Brack and Buckner see them. Brack orders the campus to be locked down until the werewolves are back. Arriving at Teague's house, the The two find the back porch in shambles. They find a covered silver platter with the note saying, "For the head of the trustees," with Teague's severed head inside.
Lim is one sick mother.
As Lim is nowhere to be found, they return to the campus and inform Luther about their discovery. They vote to split up and kill Brack on sight. Devlin confronts Lim directly, and they fight hand to hand. Before Devlin can shoot Lim, he is stabbed in the abdomen by Buckner. Buckner then finds Luther and threatens to shoot him, but he's surprised when Luther fights back, eventually knocking him unconscious.
I enjoyed killing too much.
Meanwhile, after intense fighting, Karl finally kills Lim using knives. He then finds Jenny in Brack's house, and she says that things aren't the way they seem between her and Brack. Unfortunately, Brack appears behind Karl with a gun drawn, ordering Karl to disarm himself. When Brack is about to shoot Karl, Jenny pushes him and takes the shot instead. The gunfight immediately begins, and when Brack is out of ammo, he takes a sword before leaving. Karl follows him until they arrive in front of the school's main building. Ted is aiming a gun at Karl, but he seems unsure once Karl tells him that Brack has killed his uncle. Brack lies, saying that it's Karl who killed Teague, and some students also come brandishing their weapons. Finally deciding to believe Karl, Ted aims his gun at Brack instead. Brack orders the other students to seize Ted, but they refuse to, coming to Karl's side. Brack laughs and dares Ted to shoot him.
Halt, Colonel Brack.
For what, Teague?
Racial purity!
I was very proud of you. You know, just because you made one mistake doesn't mean you shouldn't keep fighting.
Doc says he'll be up and around in no time.
Oh, whoop-de-fucking do. What the hell does he know?
How the hell am I supposed to recover when I gotta keep your butt out of trouble, sir?